Welcome to Freeze Your Milk Podcast. I'm your host, Bridget, along with my husband, Chris. Podcast where we talk about the comedic side and serious side of parenting, life, and relationships. We are boy parents. We have two boys, Enzo and Rhett, with about a 6-year age gap between the two. You can check out our website, freezeyourmilk.com. Also, feel free to follow us on Instagram at Freeze Your Milk Podcast. Thanks and hope you enjoy.
Welcome back.
Welcome back.
It's Tuesday.
Woohoo! It's our birth episode.
It's Enzo's birthday.
It is, yeah. I figured we'll put like a quick warning out there that our birth was great, but the post-birth was a little traumatic. So if you are first-time pregnant, maybe skip this episode. If you are not first-time pregnant and you want to hear it, feel free to listen.
So it kind of all started.
We left off last week with the membrane sweeps, and then we went home after the day of the hospital.
Okay, so yeah, that stuff was traumatic and exhausting as it was because of the conversations that we had to have, the tough conversations that we had to have, and and then nothing happening after 12 hours of
the prior week,
the 12 hours of nothing happening and contractions and whatnot. But then we came home after your doctor's appointment. The midwife was like, "Hey, look, I'll meet you guys at your house later, and we'll go from there." So you disappeared into your room for a while, and I went back to work, I think. But
yeah, I don't even remember. Isn't that crazy? No, we went and we got dinner, and I think you were finishing up work, and I was eating dinner, and yeah, I think we were just making sure everything in the room was ready.
Yeah, but you were still very apprehensive.
Oh gosh, yes.
Because you weren't really feeling a whole lot.
No, and I was fully expecting we're gonna have round 2 of
just 12
midwives
hours
are gonna come over, and then nothing's gonna happen, and I'm gonna feel bad that people are here and my body didn't deliver.
Right. But we did some reassurance exercises to kind of help you navigate that and work through that particular situation. But it wasn't until it was what was it? We got out of the midwives. How did we get out of the midwives when we got home? It had to have been around 1.
No, we got home 6.
Oh, p.m.
Yeah,
that's right. So we got home around 6 p.m. It wasn't until you didn't start having contractions really until 3 a.m.
Yeah, and even then, so the midwife came over that night, and the birth assistant came to our house, and they're like, "Hey, we're gonna spend the night." And I kind of pulled the birth assistant aside, and I was like, "Hey, if I don't have a baby, are you guys just gonna go home?" And she was like, "Oh no, we're not leaving until you have a baby." And I was like, "Oh, okay." Because at this point we're 41 weeks.
You got to have a baby at this point,
We have 1 more week at most left, and she was like, don't worry, we're not gonna leave you and go home, and you'll still be pregnant. You're gonna have a baby. Might take a day or 2, but you're gonna have a baby and we'll be here. Yeah. And I was like, okay, that made me feel a lot better. And so they gave me some homeopathics, some Kolosh, I think it was, blue Kolosh, black Kolosh, something like that. And did they have me drink tea? I don't even think we did the tea.
Yeah, you did a little bit of toilet sitting, ball sitting, the side things, with the weird egg ball or the hourglass ball or whatever it was.
Yeah, the peanut ball. There just wasn't a whole lot happening, and they're like, "Hey, go to bed and wake us up when stuff starts happening." And so, of course, I couldn't sleep because I was just like, "Oh my gosh, is my body just not going to do anything?"
I was sawing logs.
You were, and that doesn't help me when I'm trying to fall asleep. But then I saw on their front door camera the birth assistant left, and I was like,
"Man, she just said she was going to stay."
I was like, "Dang it!" I was like, obviously, she left at 2 in the morning, and so I was like, she obviously got called to another birth or something, to help out with. But the midwife is still here, I think, at least from what I could tell.
No, because she gets great sleep here.
She does get great sleep here. And so I was kind of like, oh, someone else's body's doing it and mine's not.
Just woe is me.
Woe is me. Never gonna have a baby. We're pregnant forever.
That wasn't the night that you came in because I slept in the other room.
No.
You came in and got me in the middle of the night.
No, that was the 12-hour.
You're like, have sex with me in the kitchen. I'm like, okay. It was like 3 o'clock in the morning.
That was the 12-hour the week prior. Yeah. No, so I finally fell asleep, and at 3 a.m. I woke up because I had a contraction, and I was like, oh, it woke me up. That's amazing. And then nothing, and 12 minutes went by, and I had another one finally, and I was like, well, son of a bitch, these are not close together. Never mind. So I went back to sleep, or tried to at least. And then I think around 4, I got the midwife up and got you up, I think, around that time, because I was like, hey, they're getting a little more intense and a little bit closer together. Nothing crazy yet, but I think something is actually happening. So I went and woke the midwife up and was just like, hey, this is what's starting to happen. She was like, great. Go ahead and call your doula, let her know, get her over here. She's, because the hardest part is they don't know if I was going to go to 0 to 100 in 30 minutes or.
Because you did that before.
Yeah. So there was hey,
which essentially you ended up doing, so.
Yeah, kind of. Arlo wants to make sure you hear him too.
Well, he knows the stories about him.
He does. So, called the doula. She was so excited. I was like, hey, it's slowly progressing. She was like, I'm on my way. I'll be there in an hour. And then we also called the photographer at that time. And I was like, hey, so sorry to wake you up. Things are starting to progress. She was like, okay, what's your midwife saying? And midwife in the background's like, tell her to start on her way now.
Yeah, tell her to come over.
Right now, come over. So photographer was like, cool, getting in the car. I'll be there in about an hour. Good to go. And then we're just standing in the kitchen here, and stuff started moving a little bit. And I started having to sway through contractions.
Your back was tight.
My back was super tight. These contractions were so different than the ones I had with Rhett. The ones I had with Rhett were very much like a wave on the ocean, slowly build, it peaks, and it's super intense, and then it falls off immediately. These were I feel it coming, and then it was just at the peak. There was no slow build, and it would just hold at the peak of the contraction, and then it would slowly fade off. I was like, whew, these are reverse waves. Super, super intense. There's no build up. It's just bam in your face. So you had to do a lot of counter pressure, really early on.
With helping the whole thing.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Pretty much from 5 a.m. on, you had to put pressure on my back every contraction.
Yep.
And then let's see. So the doula got here, and she kind of gave your hands a break. So Rose was able to help.
Yeah.
With doing hip squeezes and
applying pressure to the back and making sure that mom's, comfortable as can be.
Yeah.
You did a lot of the peanut ball, and then you did some toilet sitting. So we were trying different things to make sure that you were a little bit more comfortable. The pressure wasn't as bad, I don't think, yet, but it was starting to get there.
Yeah. I had on my cute robe.
Yeah, you were all ready to go. You were so concerned that it wasn't going to be perfect. Your doula wasn't going to be there. Your photographer wasn't going to be there. The tub wasn't going to be filled. You were just so concerned it was going to happen in the middle of the night, and I was catching the baby, and it was nice because everybody ended up showing up.
Yeah. So I'd say probably photographer and doula got here probably at close to 6, maybe 5:30 or 6.
Yeah.
And then maybe a little bit before that. I'd say probably around 8 a.m. stuff was starting to kick in way more. And it started getting pretty intense. And we moved out of the kitchen and into the bedroom because we were in the kitchen for a while.
Yeah.
Just kind of.
You were trying to eat, but you couldn't eat.
I know. I was trying to give myself some protein, and I was just I just can't eat this. And bending over the counter was nice because it was higher versus our bed or anything else. And that was really helpful to kind of just bend over the counter and have you push on my back, or have Rose push on my back, or doula, or do the double hip squeeze.
Right.
But at this point, like, I definitely wasn't associating anything with pain. It was just, ooh, these are intense. And, like, that's a lot of uncomfortable pressure.
Right.
But it wasn't pain at that point, which was really nice. And then probably around 8, I was like, hey, I think I'd like to try to get in the water a little bit. Just to see how my body does being in the birthing tub. Got in the water, and I think it did slow stuff down a little bit, the contractions. I'd say they spread out some. And the midwives had warned me, they're like, hey, it might slow it down because your body, it just happens with the water sometimes. So probably after, I don't even know how long I was in there, an hour maybe?
Maybe, yeah.
They're like, let's get you out of the tub and have you do some toilet sitting because the toilet is the dilation station. And then I think they asked you to like refill the tub because the water had cooled off.
So I had to take
that
bucket
was a
by
journey
bucket.
in and of itself.
Yeah, bucket by bucket, get all the water out of the pool, and then put fresh hot water in there.
Yeah.
Has to be 100 degrees. I'm like, okay. Trying to get this off the tap. That was fun.
And then did I go back in the tub or did they have me do the bed at that point?
They had you do the bed.
Oh.
That's where it really ramped up.
Yeah. So I think at that point they checked me and I was like, before I got on the bed, they checked me and I think I was like a 7-8 centimeter range. And I was kind of bummed because I thought I'd be further because I progressed a lot quicker with Rhett's birth.
Yeah, but you were also an 8 and then 5 minutes later he was out. So, I don't know.
Yeah, with Rhett's birth.
There was no progression. It was just done.
So I think I was like a 7 or an 8. And they're like, okay, like, let's have you get on the bed and do the peanut ball on your side. And holy shit. Those were so intense. Like, you couldn't get good counter pressure on my back. So there was, like, no counter pressure. You were, like, trying to, like, push sideways on it. And I was like, this is not working at all. Like, laying on my side with the peanut ball, which basically looks like one of those, like, big round yoga balls, but, like, squished so it's like a peanut shape. And you, like, put it, like, between your thighs, and it, like, opens your, like, hips up a lot and your pelvis up. So it keeps it open through the contraction, which is super, super intense. And I remember the midwife was like, let's do these for, I don't know.
5 more contractions.
5 more contractions. And I got through, like...
3.
And I was like, can we compromise, please? I just want to get back in the water. These are so intense.
She's like, give me one more. So you went through one more.
Yeah. She was like,
and then
okay.
And then she slipped one past you because she made you go through another one.
I know. So I gave her, I think, the 5 or close to it. But I remember I got back in the water and I was like, oh, thank God. Like, so much better. But I was so glad we got that birth pool because it had a inflatable bottom to it. Because I was on my knees the majority of the time.
Yeah.
Like, I was kneeling majority of the time.
You said it wasn't bad. It was pretty comfy.
No, it was super comfortable. Like, I didn't feel like I was kneeling because we have tile floor. I didn't feel like I was kneeling on tile floor. Like, it did its job perfectly, that cushion on the bottom of it.
Plus, I set up the bathroom and made it all comfy for you with
You
your
did.
angel lights. And,
Fairy lights.
Or fairy
My
lights.
my angel lights.
Whatever.
My fairy lights. At this point, it was probably close to like 9 something. 9:30 maybe. Maybe later than that. I lost all track of time that day.
Yeah.
Like, I remember we opened up the bathroom window so the photographer had good light, the blind, and it was like raining outside, and it was just like a perfectly gloomy morning. Like a very peaceful, tranquil morning.
Yeah, I remember that.
And I remember like looking out the window at all the raindrops, and like Arizona, we don't get a whole lot of rain.
So it was nice.
It was very nice. But I remember she checked me a couple more times in the tub. And I was progressing. I got through my 8. And he was still not engaged very much. I think he was like a station 0. Like, not very dropped at all. And then this part I know the timestamps of. Oh, at this point, the other midwife, so we had Karen here, and then the other midwife, Allison, arrived because her birth had finished at the birth center. And then the student midwife / birth assistant, Lori, she arrived. So we had the photographer, the doula, me and you, 2 midwives, and then a birth assistant / student midwife all here. Which was nice. Like, I was glad because Allison, I'd met her a couple times, and I was really glad she was able to, like, be here to, like, attend the birth. Mm-hmm. But they were very in the background, like, letting
us to go through
everything.
They just stayed out of it. They checked vitals on baby, and they checked vitals on you, and that was it. They would walk away and
I was looking at
give recommendations. And
yeah, we got the photos from the photographer today, actually, and I was looking at the photos, and I'm like, there's multiple photos where they check the baby's heartbeat on the fetal Doppler. I don't fucking remember any of that.
Oh yeah, she was checking it like when you started really going active. She was checking it like every 10 minutes.
No idea. Like, I was zoned out of that completely in, like, labor land. Because I was looking at these photos and I'm like, I don't remember that at all. Like, definitely don't remember that. But, so she came and checked me, and I'd had some pretty intense, like, definitely pushing my edge as far as, like, the pressure contractions in the pool. And so Karen came and checked me, and she was like, hey, like, you're at a 9, you're doing so good. You only have 1 centimeter to go. Baby's still pretty high up, but I'm not worried about that. And this was at 10:21. And then she went out to, like, the kitchen to, like, eat a snack or something.
Yeah, and you were just, I think you were just kind of deflated.
I was a little bummed.
You're like, I'm not at a 10, what the hell? You know?
Yeah.
Plus the baby's not here. But then you had this really big contraction that gave you a little bit more movement, and you checked down there, but you couldn't feel anything.
Oh yeah, so that was at like 10:23. My body did the fetal ejection reflex, where it feels like you like legit vomit downward, like your whole body just pushes, and there's like, it's not in your control. And I was like, like, it sounds like, I feel like it sounded like a vomit. Mm-hmm. And I remember internally, like, as soon as I did that, I, like, put my fingers in to, like, see, like, could I feel the baby in the canal at all? Like, and I couldn't. And I remember internally, like, mentally, I was like, why the fuck is my body pushing when I'm only at 9 centimeters and he is not descended at all?
And the midwife that's supposed to catch the baby ran off to eat some nachos in the kitchen.
I mean, I don't blame her. It was like 10 something in the morning.
That's when I went around the corner and I was like, hey guys, it's time. And Karen's like, no, you know, she comes over and she's like, I was like, hey, no, it's time. Because I remember this from Rhett. I remember exactly what happened. And I'm like, you don't have time to be sitting there eating nachos and washing your hands and trying to put gloves on, trying to catch a freaking baby. You need to get in here now. And shit, what was it, 10:23 or 10:24 or no, 10:27.
Yeah.
10:27, you did one more push.
So you went and got Karen. Laura was already in there still. So Laura was like, already like, okay, shit's happening.
Yeah.
And my body did the fetal ejection a second time, and it was like maybe not even 40 seconds after the first one, I feel like. And I checked because I was like, I still understand why my body's pushing. And I like put my fingers in and checked, and I was like, oh, like I can feel his head, like he is like almost at like the opening of the canal, like he's way down here all of a sudden, basically. And that one push, my body like moved him from like my cervix to like 90% of the way through my canal, like that quickly. And so I was like, oh, okay, like shit's like happening. And I remember like Karen comes running in and she like sticks her hand down by like my bottom, and Laura sticks her hand down like by the front to help kind of support to hopefully prevent tearing, and just give support to like the perineum area. And I was still on my knees, so they were like, get one leg up, it'll make it a lot easier on you, and like it'll open you up more. And so I like got one leg up, and the next push he came out to like his cheekbones, and I could feel that he was like partially out, his head partially out. And I remember that burning sensation, and I was like, nope. Oh, fuck no. I'm going to rip wide open. We are pushing right now because I'm not going to get stuck at, like, the widest part and just chill here. And I just bared down, like, as hard as I could, and my body, like, pushed again, and he came out to, I think, like, his, like, shoulders. on that next one. And then like 1 or 2 more pushes and he was completely out.
Yep.
And it was 10:27 when at 10:21 I was only at 9 centimeters.
Right.
And like not descended at all.
But that was the same shit that happened with Rhett too.
It did.
You know, you showed up at the birth center there and you were only,
8.5.
And what, 20 minutes later? Not
yeah,
even.
I think it was like 40, but yeah.
40 minutes later, Rhett's born.
Yeah, and with Rhett, my body did the fur like 3 times, and this one it was like 5, but Rhett was also descended, whereas Arlo wasn't. But he came out, they got him up, unwrapped the cord around the neck, which is super normal. Because you and I had talked about that, like the cord normally is around the neck almost as like a protection measure for birth.
Yeah.
And so they got the cord from around his neck.
They're not breathing, air at that point really anyway, because they're getting everything from the cord.
And they like laid him on my chest in the birthing pool, and I just like held him, and I was just like, holy shit. Like, I just had a baby. Mm-hmm. What was your thoughts, like, through that whole process of what we talked about already? Like, give me, like, your point of view.
I was just glad it was over, honestly. Yeah, because this pregnancy was a lot harder, like, on me mentally than the last one. Because, again, this one I had Rhett to worry about and Enzo, and you weren't feeling
we'd had the pregnancy loss previously.
Yeah, we had the 2.
Yeah.
And you weren't feeling too great towards the end, and you were starting to get your mental was kind of starting to wane a little bit. You were just ready to be done, and I was grateful that it was over. I was grateful that you got to experience the same thing essentially you did with Rhett, but at a slower pace.
Yeah.
Because that was one of the biggest complaints that you made about Rhett's birth, is it was too quick.
Yeah.
So this one I think was the perfect amount of time and the perfect amount of pushes, and I think it just was perfect for you. And again, you have this strong attachment to him because he's been inside you for 9 months. At that point I didn't know who he was.
Yeah.
So it was just...
You're like, he's a gray-looking baby who's slimy.
I was more concerned about, you and how you're feeling and, getting the baby up and getting him onto you, so...
I loved that I got to just be in the birth pool for, I don't know, 10 minutes maybe? I don't even know how long it was.
No, you were in there for a while.
Was it longer than that? Mm-hmm. Again, time was like, I have no idea. But I got to be in the birth pool for a while with him, just snuggling and
Yeah, it wasn't rushed.
No, and we had requested that from the beginning with them. Like, hey, with Rhett, I pretty much pushed him out, and within minutes they're like, okay, get out of the water.
Yeah,
like stand up.
Time to get on the bed.
So it was really nice to I got to just hold him, and there's this picture that our photographer got that like I'm kissing his toes because I was holding him and so his feet were like up on my face because I was like holding him out looking at him. And it's one of my favorite photos. Like, I love it. It's so cute. And we just got to just soak it up. And
be in that moment.
Yeah. Like, this is our planned final baby. And just to be in that moment with him. So, he was a little wet sounding at that point. But it wasn't anything too crazy. They suctioned him. They just kept trying to get him to... they did the bulb suction and
get it out of his nose, get it out of his mouth, et cetera, et cetera.
They're like, he's probably going to cough a couple times or like...
She did. He sneezed, coughed.
Yeah.
Did it all.
So however long after, they're like, okay, let's help you stand up. We'll get you to the bed and everything else.
Yeah, it's time to deliver the placenta.
Yeah. So got to the bed, was very cozy.
She did a couple tugs.
Placenta came out fully intact. Everything was good.
No issues there.
Snuggled baby some more. We called Enzo. We video called Enzo. And so he got to see baby Arlo, and he was so excited.
Yeah.
He, loves it. He was like, oh, he's so cute. And, he's such a good big brother in that sense. He loves the babies.
Yeah.
He's a big fan. And they did all of Arlo's measurements.
Weights, yep, everything.
And found out he was 9 pounds, 3 ounces.
Yep.
Biggest baby by far. But he didn't look big. Nobody thought he was going to be that big because of the fact that he was also 22 inches long.
Yeah.
And, his head and chest and everything were also larger, so he was just very well proportionate. So he didn't look like a 9-pound chunky fat roll baby. Like
he's a twig.
He doesn't have fat rolls because he's super tall.
Yeah.
But there's no tearing, which was super nice. I appreciated that. That was fantastic. And we kind of just snuggled in bed for a while.
Mm-hmm. Cleaned up.
Yeah. And then shit hit the fan.
Yeah, and that's when it all fucking crumbled.
So probably about an hour after birth, and like 30 minutes after placenta, maybe a little bit more, I was like, oh, like I felt a fairly large gush, which is very normal post-birth. You know, you bleed, you have clots passing, like your body is working to try to get everything good to go. And the midwife was like, okay, let me take a look. And she pulled back like the pad and whatnot. And like, what did you see? Because obviously I couldn't see down there.
Yeah, it was a blood clot, but it was the size of the placenta.
Yeah.
It was massive.
Yeah.
And that wasn't the only one.
Yeah.
You know, they came out multiple times. Smaller every time, but that first one was pretty wicked to watch. I mean, it's just something very foreign to come out and something you don't necessarily want to see.
What was the midwife's reaction when she saw it?
She's like, okay, well, and then she started massaging your stomach, trying to get that kind of under control, trying to get it to firm up, apply pressure, obviously. They're very talented at what they do. And they know what they're doing. And I don't know. She was talking to the other midwife, getting kind of, her take on it. They were trying to devise a plan to figure out what's going on. They wanted to give you a little bit more time, see if your body was going to clot on its own, see if it was going to heal.
Yeah.
Your body didn't.
Yeah.
And you continued to bleed.
I feel like it was fairly shortly after that they jabbed Pitocin in my thigh.
Yeah. They ran Pitocin in your thigh. They gave you Cytotec.
So we'll run through the gambit. So shortly after that large clot and a large amount of blood loss in my body, my lower uterus wasn't getting hard. The upper uterus was, but the lower uterus wasn't. So it wasn't clotting. And that's when they went into full emergency, but very calm about it. Kind of There was definitely a sense of urgency needed there that they had, but they did jam the shot of Pitocin in my thigh to start getting my body to contract harder to clot. And then Karen grabbed the IV, and afterwards she told me, she was like, I had one chance to get that IV before I was calling 911. She's like, if I couldn't get your IV on the first try, I was calling 911.
Because you have issues with that.
I'm terrible at IVs and blood draws and all that. But she was like, I knew I had to get it on that first try.
Right.
Otherwise, we were transferring you for blood transfusions and other fun shit. And she got the IV on the first try, and it was like something out of a movie. I've never been in a situation to see. But I always just thought it was kind of a Hollywood thing that they squeeze the saline bag.
Nope, they slam fucking fluids through you.
I'm like, I don't know how she can blow my vein out. She squeezed that bag as hard as she could, as fast as my body would take it. They're slamming fluids in me. I went through 2 bags of IV saline. They did 2 doses of Pitocin in the IV bag, and then gave me Cytotec pills, which are another pill that causes contraction. So at this point, 3 Pitocin, and now they gave me 4 Cytotec pills, and we're like, hey, crack these with your teeth and then stick them in your cheek and suck as hard as you can. And I was like, my mouth is so dry because my nose was completely congested. You guys heard it on the podcast last week. My nose was so congested. And I was like, okay. And I kept trying to suck, and it was just the powder because there was no liquid in my mouth at all. It was terrible. I was like, there's just nothing. So I stick these pills in my cheek, and I've crushed them, and I'm trying to suck them in my cheek to get it into my bloodstream, I guess. So it was or into my body as quick as possible. And then they pushed 10 units of, I think it was TS something. It's a clotting agent. that like really pushes your body to clot. And then the shakes started.
Yeah. And you went ghost white.
Did I?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You went ghost white. That's when I left the room.
Yeah.
With the baby.
Because you're like, oh, fuck, Bridget's going to die.
No, it was more than that. Because so we had a conversation a week before, because we were leaving the birth, or we were at the birth center, and he deaccelerated.
No, that was the day before.
Or the day before. The day before, yeah. He deaccelerated on the stress test. So we had to go to the hospital, and we spent time in the hospital, and we were all worried about that. But we had a conversation in the car that, you know, if you were saying, if it goes bad, you know, we need to do this, and this, and you need to do this, and this. And it was a really tough conversation. Well, it started to go bad in our room.
It did.
And I was trying to handle it as much as I could, but my thought process was I'm going to take the baby and I'm going to go into his room in his nursery, because the last memory I cannot be holding this baby in this room. Something happened to you, and the last memory or association that I have is that this baby caused that.
Yeah. So you had to like separate the two.
So I had to separate the two, and I was like, look, I'm just going to go into his nursery for a little bit.
Yeah.
And sit with him, you know.
Yeah, and the doula was like by my side, like she hadn't left, thankfully. So we had the two midwives, the, you know, student midwife / birth assistant. The doula was still his photographer, had already left at that point. And so the doula like stayed with me, but I just remember all of a sudden I started getting really hot, and I was like, but then I was shaking, and like I couldn't
uncontrollably.
Oh, like full body convulsions, like
when your body's
like,
low on blood,
like it's my body was attempting to go into shock.
Yeah, it was trying to fight for it. It's fighting for itself. You know?
Yeah. Part of it was the cytotuck and the Pitocin, because they will give you shakes really bad, and so I think it was a mix of my body kind of going into shock. But the main thing that wasn't happening, which was good, is my blood pressure wasn't dropping.
Yeah.
So that was really good. Because that would have been like super big concern too. Yeah. But yeah, I guess I was white as a ghost. Everything that the midwives and you and the doula told me is everyone was like, oh, fuck. Like, come on, Bridget, don't do this.
Right.
You know? And I remember with Rhett's birth, you had asked the birth center, different birth center, and you'd said, if there's a hemorrhage, what happens? Because that was your number one concern, was a postpartum hemorrhage. Like, after I gave birth, if I just started hemorrhaging everywhere.
They were pretty vague. I remember them saying that they have their tricks, but
yeah,
like, we'll take her to the hospital, the closest hospital.
Yeah. But these midwives,
man, they came with all their gear. They had everything.
The back of our master bedroom for weeks has looked like the back of an ambulance, as far as like the amount of bags for every possible scenario.
Yeah, and they were prepared.
They were,
and honestly, they didn't skip a beat. They didn't make me feel. I think the only reason why I wasn't more messed up with the whole thing is because they were so fucking calm about it.
Yeah, like I could tell there was an urgency there, and I could tell by the way they were looking, like at each other and at me and at each other, that like shit is really bad. But it wasn't to the point where they were like, we're
gonna call it and go get an ambulance and send you off to the hospital.
So it took about 3 hours.
Yeah.
For my body to finally like get it figured out. But I remember that the shaking was so bad, and like I couldn't breathe through my nose, and so the shaking was causing me to breathe insanely fast. And all I could mentally think to myself was like, get it together, Bridget. You can't fucking hyperventilate and give them another medical emergency on top of what's already happening.
Right.
And I was like trying to slow my breathing down, and I was like, I can't fucking slow my breathing down because the fucking shaking. And my fucking nose is stuffed up. Like, I was so mad in that moment, because I was like, I don't need to add onto this already escalated situation. And I'm not panicked. I just can't fucking breathe through my nose. And so I can't slow my breathing down because my body is shaking so hard that I'm like, like panting like a fucking dog, and my mouth is dry as all get out. Like, this is just not going the way I want it to go right now. And like, I kept saying to the midwife, I was like, I'm sorry, I can't slow my breathing down. And she was like, it's okay. And I was like, I can't stop the fucking shakes. I hate them. She was like, it's okay. It's fine. I just like kept apologizing. Like, I'm sorry. I'm inconveniencing everybody with my medical emergency.
Oh, God.
So I sent the doula to like check on you a couple times just to make sure you were okay and like doing good. And you eventually came back in with Arlo into the room. Mm-hmm. And they did a round of vitals on the baby.
Yeah, and then he started to do poorly.
And then he started like desatting from his oxygen. And I was on the up, but I was not like stable yet. Yeah. Like there was still very much. So Karen was working on me, and then Allison had to start working on Arlo, and I couldn't see what was happening, and I didn't like that. But how would you describe, like, what did they do?
She went through a series of like massages on his chest and his back, and then
because was his pulse ox low?
Yeah, his pulse ox dropped to like 80. I don't know. It was like 86, 87.
Ooh, that's bad.
It was lower.
Yeah.
And his vitals weren't great, and he still sounded really wet.
Yeah.
And she's like, I don't really love this. So she got the sucker out and started trying to clear his nose, clear his mouth, and she flipped him over, had him on his stomach, was doing all this stuff to try and get shit out of his lungs. She listened to him again, and she's like, no, I don't like this. So she went and grabbed a tube and shoved it down his fucking throat and started sucking everything out of him. And finally she got that under control, took it back, and she's like, oh yeah, now his lungs are good. And I'm like, oh my God.
I remember watching your face because I couldn't see him, and I just saw your face starting to just get like this look of like, my fucking wife and my fucking son are both
doing horribly, like
crashing, and like, what is happening right now? This like, I could just see the trauma setting in on your face. And for me, and I didn't say it because I didn't want to say anything, but for me, like, I couldn't see what was happening, but everything they were describing, I was like, fuck, this is like Enzo when he was born. Like, he had severe respiratory issues that, like, went really bad really quickly. But apparently, so the midwives, again, were telling me after the fact, they're like, at one point we almost called 911 for you, Bridget, because we thought, like, you're borderline needing a transfusion if you weren't going to start clotting, within, like, the next 10 minutes we were calling it, because you were losing too much blood. And then you started stabilizing a little bit and getting better, and then fucking Arlo started doing terrible, and we almost called 911 on him because of the fact that, like, he was a baby, and we can't have him, like, desat from an oxygen standpoint like that.
Yeah. Luckily,
we both stabilized.
Yeah.
But that was highly traumatic.
It was extremely eventful.
Yeah. And again, like, I can't stress enough, like, we've talked about it, and I feel like they honestly probably handled the situation better than a hospital would have.
Yeah.
Because they run skill labs on this shit, like, weekly.
Yeah.
About what do we do with a hemorrhage, and what is our plan of attack, and, like, they knew where every fucking thing in the bedroom was, every medical bag, every medicine, they knew where it all was. The Pitocin was already, like, in a needle ready to go before I even gave birth in case they needed to, do it. Like, they were so prepared.
Yeah.
It, like, blew my mind. But that was our...
traumatic day.
Yeah.
2 days, I'd say, but...
Yeah, traumatic day before. Really good labor and delivery. And then shit hit the fan, and it was traumatic.
Well, we pulled through.
And then everybody stabilized. Like, Arlo finally started stabilizing. I started clotting, and I wasn't, like, dropping blood anymore. And the midwives were like, all right, we can all take a breath now. Like, we're going to hang out for, like, another 2 hours, Bridget, just to make sure you guys are good. Mm. We ordered lunch. They got lunch. Like, we all kind of just relaxed, and everything did really well. I didn't, and they had told Rose, our doula, because they're like, hey, how long are you staying? Rose is like, oh, I think I'll stay till like 6 p.m. And I was like, oh my gosh, you are a lifesaver. Like, thank you so much. Because it was a lot. And the midwife was like, okay. She's like, I want you. She's like, Rose, here's my number. I want you to call me when you're leaving, and if needed, I'm going to go back over tonight and check on Bridget and check on Arlo. And like,
She came back over anyway.
she did.
Yeah.
No, it was the next day.
Oh,
It was the next day.
oh
Yeah.
okay, maybe.
Yeah, because because Rose, I took my temperature, and so Rose told her like my temperature was down because a cytotech makes you spike a fever, and I spiked up to like 102.
Yeah.
And they're like, we need your fever to come down. Like, we can't have you having this high of a fever after blood loss and like with a newborn and everything. It's just it's a lot. My fever had come down, which was good. But yeah, the midwives came back the next day for the 24-hour post, birth checkup, and everybody's vitals were great. I wasn't really having any major bleeding that was excessive. And that was that.
And that was it. We went to bed. He stayed up. He didn't sleep very well that night.
Yeah, it wasn't terrible. I
He was still acclimating. He was just fried from the day. It was a lot.
We were fried from the day. It was a lot.
Beautiful birth. The after sucked, but it all panned out. So
it did.
Those were my takeaways.
Do you feel like you... So I remember the next day you were like, I can't be in this room, like in our bedroom. You're like, I can't be in here. Like, I need to just not be in here. Because I think you're like, it's too fresh. Like the PTSD almost. Do you feel like you have residual like trauma from it?
No.
So I realized that I do.
Yeah.
So we washed our comforter the other day and we put like a fuzzy blanket on me. And then you came and put the comforter on top of the fuzzy blanket.
And that's how you were when you went through it all.
And that's exactly the layering of blankets when I was like basically in shock. My body was like severely shaking and I was like bleeding profusely. And as soon as you put that second blanket on me, my body was like, oh no. And I remember I like looked at you and I was like, no. Take the other one off. And you were like, what? But I realized like it triggered me.
That's interesting.
And then we were watching The Recruit the other day. And he like goes into shock in the back seat and starts shaking uncontrollably. And I remember like we were watching that and I was like, this is like really close to home. Like these shakes are like, it definitely made me feel uneasy.
Man, that's going to take you a little bit of time to work through it too.
It was interesting though, because I was like, oh, like my body has like physical reaction, emotional reactions to this right now because of it was a traumatic event.
Yeah, it was.
It was interesting to realize that. But
I'm just glad everybody's safe.
Me too. And it was like 5 hours and 27 minutes from like when the contractions really started till when he was born. And Rhett was like 3 hours and 24 minutes. So
not bad.
I can't complain.
No.
And no tearing. Yay. But that's the
birth story that wraps up.
Yeah.
Well, we appreciate you guys listening.
Thanks for listening, guys.
Hope you have a good week.
And we'll talk again next week.
Thanks everybody for listening. You can check us out at
freezermilk.com
or Instagram.
Freezer Milk Podcast.
Until next week, guys. Thanks.
Don't forget, parenting is a trip. We are all here on the journey with you together. Thanks so much for listening.